I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about processes. And I recognize it's probably not something that has been talked about generally in a forum like this, but we felt it was important at Dell, as we built out our global team, to really focus on global process. It's been said that the holy grail of web analytics is people, process, and technology. And actually, in my experience, the underpinnings of organizational maturity are people, tools, and process. So there's a lot of similarity there. So when we looked at what we were doing in our transformation and going global, we recognized we had some great people. And we had some really robust tools. But we were a little lacking on the process front. So a while back, I got a call, and a very compelling call. They said, we're building out a global team. And we'd love you to come and establish a project management office, a program management office for us. And I'd been at Dell for some time, and I'd done some stuff in program management offices, and I felt pretty good about doing that. And then they said, it's for our online web analytics team. And I went, what? I don't know anything about web analytics. I have no clue what you're talking about. And the folks that I was interviewing with said, don't worry about that. If you've got the process, we've got the web analysts. I said, great. So I took the job. And I'm really glad I did. So I joined the team and spent about 30 days, actually a little bit longer maybe, with some folks. And we did nothing but what we call due diligence. We just hung out with our web analysts and with our testing managers. We watched them. We watched them do everything they did. We followed them around. We asked a lot of questions. We were actually quite pesky, I think. We listened to everything that they said. We asked them why they were doing the things they were doing and what the outcomes were supposed to be. We learned how they did their work. That was critical, because we were going to come in and change their processes. We didn't want to break anything. We needed to understand what the end state, what is this work that is web analytics and testing. And through this process, some themes began to materialize for us. We figured out that we had a very entrepreneurial organization. We had some great minds, but they're working in silos. We didn't have organizational strategy and organizational goals. We had a lot of people doing very different roles all at the same time. So they were wearing many, many hats. And we had some very effective generalists, but very few specialists. And in a case like this, where you have generalists, the tools that you're putting in place are not being used to their fullest potential. It wasn't fair to say we had no process. We actually had tons and tons of process all over the world, but none of them were the same. Right? So if you saw tests being deployed in EMEA, it was very different than the way we deployed tests in Asia. And frankly, we saw disparity in our analytics processes as well. So when we started comparing the values of our testing, we had disparity, and that was a problem. We had great test ideas. There was no shortage of great test ideas, but I don't think I was in the job for 2 days before the phone started ringing and folks were saying, hey, Carol, we want to test here, but we can't. We want to do this analysis, but we can't. We need you to help us. So we had capability challenges. And finally, we had made some significant investments in analytics tools, as Ed had mentioned. But we had not made the same level of investment in our processes or our workflow tools. So we had a lot of people working really, really hard, kind of bullying the work across the line, but they weren't able to work smart because we had all of these obstacles in the way. So these were the major themes that we saw. And there was a lot out there, a lot of opportunity to bring value to the organization. So we had to make some decisions. We had to figure out what were we going to do first. And this was a tough time because we had to prioritize what were we going to do in our first 90 days, 180 days, a year. We called it the activity of prioritizing, frankly, the elephants and the cows. So the elephants, the opportunities around elephants, are those things that if you ask 10 people, what are the things that cause you grief every day, you get the same 10 answers, right? It's if you could fix this, my life would be better. If you could do this, I could work harder. If you can fix this, we'll be able to optimize. So the elephants are pretty easy to identify. They typically haven't been addressed because everybody's working so hard. And so they just kind of push through the obstacles. We found 3 major elephants that we had to address very quickly. Our planning cadence. The way we were so busy executing, we weren't taking the time to plan. So when I'm talking about planning, I'm talking about global planning. What are we going to do across the globe? I'm talking about regional planning. What are the benefits, what are the tests that will bring benefit to the regions? And frankly, test planning. How are we going to implement this test in the very best possible way to get the best results? Pipeline management, and this was an area of huge opportunity for us because, again, we had so many ideas, it began to be very important for us to prioritize those ideas and understand which ideas would work best and where, and why it made sense to put an idea ahead of another one. And finally, methodologies, right? It became very apparent that we could work quicker, stronger, faster if we were all using at least the same methodology. Right? And then we could put tools and process and documentation into place that would help people work faster and faster again. The second area we wanted to address were the sacred cows. And I'll be very frank with you. Addressing the elephants, that's a pretty quick hit, right? That's basic project management, just block and tackle stuff, and you get immediate benefit. Everybody's on board. People love you for doing that work. Addressing the sacred cows, that's really tough. The reason they're sacred cows is, frankly, nobody wants to touch it, right? It's an area of opportunity in the business that is usually epitomized by, we've never done that, we don't do that, that's too risky, you can't do that. So addressing the sacred cows, and one of the most areas of opportunity that we saw was in checkout. To date, at this point in time, we had never done any checkout testing at Dell. It was huge. So the management team said, we'd love you to fix that, but you have to fix this. And so that was the priority, and we went ahead and started doing it. So we made a decision. As I had joined the organization, we had originally planned to use a very architected, very quick sort of SWAT team type methodology in process optimization and transformation. And this is typically called an architected approach, right? Where you have a team of project managers and you say, go make process, and boy, if you want process, get a team of project managers, they'll do that for you. But it's really, I use the word SWAT team because that's what they do. They come in, they understand your business, they do process design, they do process training, they build out the tools and the templates, get everybody on board, and everybody moves. It's great. It's very fast deployment. You get lots of near-term benefit, and it's super useful for very structured organizations like the Army, NATO, NASA, those organizations that have to have immediate results. But it's not readily adopted. I mean, you get a lot of, well, that's not invented here, why do I have to do it that way kind of a reaction. And frankly, it's really hard to sustain because when the project managers go away, they're gone, and we can go back to the way we did things before. We elected, after some time, to take a more collaborative approach. We never actually implemented an architected approach. It just didn't feel right. We went with a collaborative approach, which is a much slower deployment methodology, has much more lasting benefit to the organization, but requires investment from the organization of people and time. Because the project managers are facilitating the work, they're not doing the work. And the project managers are taking the ideas, the best ideas from the folks that are in the team, and implementing those. It becomes much more readily adopted, right? Because we invented it here, and it becomes organic. So as I move from process opportunity to process opportunity, those processes are much more likely to stay in place and be more easy to control. So here's our big picture. And this was some time in the making. We had to have a global view of what our testing process looked like. And through the process that I just described, I met with a bunch of our testing managers. And I said, well, what are the key activities? What are the highest level of activities that we think we have to do on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annual basis? And we wrestled through it, and this is what they've come to, I call it a process flow, they call it a wheel. We refer to the wheel. This is the wheel of our testing process. And you see at the very beginning of the wheel is idea generation and pipeline management. I mentioned that earlier. And each of these key activities is a bucket of work that has to happen for a test to actually come into existence. The blue are the responsibility of our analytics managers, and the green are the responsibilities of our testing managers. Documentation is indicated by the yellow. Documents are required at that time. And then calibration and stakeholder management are indicated by the little red triangle, right? So here we have one global view of what right looks like, and hopefully what great looks like, for testing. The beautiful thing about having something like this is that you have everybody thinking about the same thing, and you can now begin to build out a quality plan that says if you don't do these things, that's a quality issue. And then it gets hard, really, really hard. And for folks that have any kind of process design, this is L2 and L3, very deep level process definition. But forget, we did this with testing managers and analytics managers contributing. But I can tell you very quickly, this is where the rubber meets the road. And you know, when I was setting up due diligence meetings to do this work, I could empty a room in a heartbeat because this is tough. This is tough. What you're seeing here is just a few of the tasks that are required for brainstorming. So we went deep. But again, as I said, now it's documented. You can train folks. You can say, guys, you know, new people coming into the door, this is the process that we use. You can build tools to support this process. You can have quality measures in place. And you can say, okay, this test was implemented with the right level of quality, the results are indisputable. And finally, you can put operational metrics over them. So you can actually see, as an organization, how quickly are you doing tests? What is the value of your tests? What is the quality of your tests? So once you've done the process design or the process transformation, it's really important to do this, what we call integration activity. Because as you get really deep into process design, it kind of gets really cool. And sometimes it's very easy to lose sight of what's actually practical and what's executable. And so you check your major milestones. You go ahead and put all of the major buckets of work and the major deliverables end on end, and you map them against your organizational goals. And you say, is this going to meet our organizational needs? And hopefully the answer is yes, and you get the green light to go ahead and implement your processes. Now, when you think about process implementation, please think about a couple of really key pieces, right? One, make sure your performance plans reflect your new processes. Nothing more confusing to people than saying, hey, you know, we've got this brand new process, but it's nowhere reflected in your performance plan, but we expect you to do it. Secondly, train, train, train. Just because folks were part of the process doesn't mean they understand the whole process. So that's really important. Put tools in place, right? So don't expect folks to implement a new process, but oh, by the way, they don't have any of the tools and templates to use yet. And finally, establish a feedback mechanism. This is super, super critical because as people get comfortable and they begin to wear this new process and get used to it, they're going to have some ideas for you. And you know, you can use a traditional sort of very formal feedback survey type thing. But I think it's also more important to use an informal methodology as well and let people actually just enter things into like an issue capture system. This is working, this is not working. And finally, use a very sort of collaborative approach. I actually work remotely, but my phone rings all the time. People give me a call and say, hey, Carol, this is working great. This is not working so well. We need your help here. Capture everything, all the good and all the bad, because what comes out of process feedback are your new ideas, right? These are the improvement areas that we're going to start working on next. So I guess to sum up, you know, process change is a journey. It is a transformation. It's also very, very iterative. We learn a little bit, and we change a little bit, and we learn a little bit more. The 80-20 rule absolutely applies. Don't let perfection get in the way of good enough. Learn as you go. And now I'm going to ask Dave Nelson to come up here and to tell you a little bit about some of the things we've learned.